Beautiful, beautiful Monday morning. Is it Monday?
It's
What's wrong with
Wednesday.
me? It's Wednesday, guys. It is Wednesday, and for some reason, I'm extremely happy this morning. I don't feel happy on the inside, but you know. I feel I look happy on the outside. I feel that way. With me in studio this morning, guys, I have a very, very, very special guest. And in light of everything that has been going on, in light of I don't even know how to describe it. It's a very emotional thing for me. So hopefully today I don't get overly emotional. But with me in studio this morning, I have Miss Trisha Simon. She is a lawyer here in Grenada and also practices law in Toronto as well. And she specializes in family law. So that should give you an idea of what we're talking about this morning, what route we're going to take this morning. Good morning, Miss Simon.
Good morning, how are you? And good morning to everybody else out there.
Good morning. I feel it's your energy I'm feeding off of. I think that's what happened. I think that's what it is this morning. I'm feeding off of your energy. There's a lot of positive energy circulating in the studio this morning. I like that. So this morning, Ms. Simon, we are going to discuss a number of things. There has been a lot of occurrences in Grenada recently as it relates to abuse. And I'm going to use abuse as the umbrella term because there are a lot of things that fall under that kind of abuse, where it's domestic abuse, whether it's physical abuse, whether it's sexual abuse to adults or to children. We're going to use that big term. So we're going to speak about it from an emotional aspect, but also from a legal aspect, and of course, you deal a lot with family law. So we're going to speak along the lines of that. So I wanted the individuals who usually call in and comment and have questions to write your questions down, because we will be opening the lines. We will be engaging in conversation. How do we deal with this situation, this thing that has become such a massive social ill in our society? As of recent, we've heard of instances or incidents where young people as early as 8 months have been sexually abused. And I mean, this is very, very troubling.
It is.
It's very, very troubling. So tell us a little bit about what you do and what you're involved in.
So before, I practiced law in Toronto, which is Ontario, Canada. And part of that is when I started practicing, I said, I don't want to do family law because it's too emotional.
Right.
What did I end up doing? Family law. So I basically specialize in family law. And I think I enjoy it. I enjoy my practice. I enjoy my clients because it gives me the opportunity to really help other people. A lot of the women, as well as men that come to the office, I see the vulnerability. I see the fact that they are... there's with domestic violence, there's always that unequal balance of power. It's about power, and that power comes out in a lot of different ways. Poverty is another issue that I face a lot in terms of the client base that I serve, and but don't think that it doesn't happen in quote unquote the high places or with the higher class, because that power and the abuse, it transcends whether you're educated, highly educated with a PhD, with a master's, or you're supposedly the ordinary person on the street. So
Right.
Yes, for sure.
So I want us to start with domestic abuse, because I believe that the child abuse is going to come lower down, and I think it's a bigger topic. Not that it is more important than all of the other topics, but I think it's a bigger topic, and I want us to leave that for last. Domestic abuse, and we're speaking about domestic abuse of women, of men, because sometimes when you hear domestic abuse, you think, oh, well, it's a man beating up your wife, But we do have a lot of instances of domestic abuse as it relates to men as well, What are some of the difficulties as in in the legal fraternity, what are some of the difficulties that you guys experience with these cases? Is it a lot of situations where when it's reported, there are a lot of drawbacks for many different reasons? Do you find that people are reluctant to go all the way with these kind of charges? What are some of the drawbacks that you guys experience?
So this is important because at this moment, every week I do training with the police in terms of how to respond to victims of domestic violence. And what I've noticed over the years and speaking to my colleagues and doing the sessions with the officers here in Grenada is that, you have situations where the system, and what I'm going to do a lot of comparisons. And maybe it may not be fair to be comparing Grenada to Canada, but, I always say there's the system works, but there's always room for improvement. Right. And I think right here in Grenada, we have the pieces, and it's just a matter of putting the pieces together. So one of the things I notice with my clients, especially my female clients, is that reluctance to report. And that comes from the fact that you report, and, for instance, you feel victimized sometimes through the system again, because there are so much things you have to take into consideration as a victim of domestic abuse. For instance, if you're a woman with 5 children, your husband is the primary, financial care of the family, like, what do you do? Right. Is there a shelter? And who is going to take you? The question is, who is going to take you with, and this may sound a little bit harsh, but with 5 children. Right. So again, that's one of the issues. And another issue is the legal process. I always say everybody has a lawyer friend, everybody has a police friend, but the reality is that when it comes to going through the legal process, for some women that may be intimidating, it may be scary, because, what justice do you get at the end of the day? You make a complaint on something that has happened to you, and the perpetrator, because there's always the perpetrator, you don't know who he or she knows, and so what happens to the documents? I mean, a lot of things. I hear some of the horror stories, right? So it does affect the woman. There's a financial cost. Unlike in Toronto, we have a lot of people who are self-represented, and there are a lot of clinics in Grenada. We're blessed because we do have a legal clinic where women can go. You can go. It's on St. John Street. Yes, it's on. St. John I have to get accustomed to the streets again. So it's on St. John Street. So you can go in. The staff is very helpful in terms of helping. And you can go into the police station. There's lots of help. And especially during this time with COVID, because, doing my research, I realized that, you already had some stumbling blocks, and they have certainly increased with COVID.
Now, would you say that the number of occurrences that you've experienced since being here have increased from the time that you've arrived to, let's say, now, of reports of abuse in general?
It has, and it's a global phenomenon. The reality is that I did an article in the paper today, a few months ago, and that was based on my research. And what I realized was that globally, whether it's in the UK, most of our people live in the diaspora, England, Canada, and the US. And here in Grenada, the police would tell you that there has been an increase because, for instance, yesterday when the teachers decided, they're doing a sit-out, what happens to this child who's left alone and you have to go home? So, I think as adults, we have a responsibility to make sure children are safe. And when we put them, children as well as adults, in a vulnerable position, that is when you see the abuse happening.
Right. Right, and we're going to get to that point that you mentioned at some point, because it really is a very important factor, something that we have to factor in when we speak about abuse and when we speak about methods and ways to mitigate abuse and instances of abuse. So we are going to get to that point. But what exactly would be, I want to bring this up, and it's a very touchy thing for me. A few years ago, I had a very close friend who did experience domestic abuse. Subsequently, she was murdered. But before she even got to that place, we tried our best to help. You know, we would do things to try and motivate her to seek legal counsel, to try and get out of the relationship, and so on. And she was very reluctant to do that. And when she finally made the decision, there was issues or concerns raised that there was no confidentiality in her legal counsel, and that is what led to her partner finding out about her leaving, and subsequently the incident that led to the murder. What advice can you give to women seeking legal counsel who may be reluctant because of incidents like that, that they don't really know who to trust or who to turn to, and they're afraid for their life?
I think that's heavy, you know.
It is heavy.
It is definitely heavy. I think what I advise my clients is that you have to use a holistic approach, and you have to use all the tools that are available to you. So for instance, it deals with evidence. So gather your evidence, talk to your friends. Everybody has a cell phone now, you keep messages. In terms of the confidence with a lawyer, as lawyers, we have an obligation to make sure that our clients' matters are kept confident. And especially if we know that there is the issue of domestic violence. You cannot tell the partner or someone else, oh, she's seeking because then you as a lawyer, you're complicit in the fact that this person, whether man, woman, or child, is being abused. And we as lawyers have an obligation to make sure that we do things properly. So, and I think the lawyer may feel insulted, but when you go to the lawyer, have that conversation. As a victim, have the conversation and say, listen, my matter is a bit sensitive at this point, when you're, because there's two stages. There's the first stage where you retain the lawyer, you're gathering evidence.
Right.
So at that point, the lawyer has no reason to go and say anything to anybody. But when, for instance, it's through a divorce and you now have to serve the party. So we have to be careful in terms of knowing exactly what happened and when it happened.
Right.
Because if you're at the stage where he or she needs to be served, obviously they're going to know. And I mean, you put the dirty in, you put the, I don't do a lot of trials in my practice, because what I do is I like to write, so I start from the beginning. I say to my clients, tell me, it's a story. I wasn't there. You tell me what happened. Break it down. Imagine, and I said to my clients, I said, imagine you're making a bread. So you have to make sure that you put in the flour, the yeast, and the oven and bun. You get it?
Right.
So and at that point, when that is done and the cold process has started, the other partner is going to know.
Yeah.
So, so we but from the beginning, and at that point, I think it's depending on how bad the situation is, no matter what, you say to the client, listen, you need to find a place of safety, and make sure that you have that safety built in. I mean, I had a client, and sometimes, you have clients where they are in the situation with the person, you're doing the stuff with them, and I said, can you leave the house? Leave the house so that we can talk, so that you can be safe.
Right.
So all of those things have to be built in.
Right. And in instances of men, how do we encourage more men to report these things? 'Cause, sometimes you hear instances of domestic abuse to men sound so foreign to us, because sometimes we feel that only men can be the aggressors, and we don't understand that sometimes men are the victim. Maybe not as often,
yes,
but it does happen. So how do we encourage more men to speak out about it? Because we women are very vocal. Women are very vocal. We're very good at being advocates for women and so on. But men sometimes shy away from it because of the stigma society has attached to that, you know. Your wife beating you, but are you weak? So, you know, this kind of thing. And not really understanding domestic abuse for what it is. You know, and it can take many forms. It's not just about the physical abuse, but it could be domestic abuse in terms of financial abuse. It could be emotional abuse. It could be verbal abuse, you know, and these are things that sometimes we don't look at as abuse. We just wait until it gets physical before we say, listen, I think I'm being abused. So how do we encourage men, one, to speak out more about these things, but also how do we encourage women or inform women on how to identify these trends of the different types of abuse that they are under?
I think in terms of helping men, you know, communication and conversations is important. So you have a partner and, you know, you don't like something, have a conversation. So if your partner is saying, well, I need XYZ, da 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 da. If you do, you know, you have a choice. Either you stay or you're like, okay, well, you know, her requests are a little bit reasonable. You understand? And I think we need to start programs from now, from the time our children are young. So that comes with the schools, through the teaching, through the church, so that we are able to educate our children, whether, you know, male as well as female. And it comes from a place of respect. I mean, if you respect somebody, genuinely respect them, in my opinion, there are certain things you don't do.
Right.
And as we get older, you know, I say we're like wine, we age, we get better. As we get older, I think, you know, both parties, whether it's male or female, should understand that certain things are not acceptable, the things that you would do at a certain age.
Right.
And I think we do need to have more men's group, so that you know, men can be able to speak to each other. Because, for instance, in Toronto and even here, I notice, well, it's a fact, it's a fact that there are so much resources for women, and we lack that for our men. And so what I see in my practice is, I have a gentleman, he calls me and he's bullied, you know, you've been bullied by your wife, and he calls me so I can bully her. So,
wow.
Yes, I have to be his mother. And it is sad because, you know, I know it makes your men feel emasculated. It makes, and then that's when you see that extra aggression coming on, because I feel helpless, I feel hopeless. So the only thing I know is my physical strength.
Right.
And but I think we do need to step up when it comes to our men, when it comes to our boys, so that they can have programs and they can get whatever help they need, so that we have a balanced playing field. Because right now, in my opinion, it's not.
Okay. Now, April was carded as Child Abuse Month. And honestly, I feel like as a people, we do not do enough. And this is just my personal opinion. We don't do enough to speak up about the different types of abuse, or to denounce them publicly. I mean, we hear in a lot of little circles people saying, "Oh, we wanna." We don't think it's right, or well, there's too much, or you may see somebody post something on social media just out of the way. But I feel like as a people, we don't stand against it enough. You know, we're not doing enough to say to these people, these victims, that we are with you, we stand with you. So sometimes they feel very alone in this abuse, because they feel like, me, if I talk about this, I'll make it on, I'll end up on Facebook. Or if I talk about this, people can talk about me, or, you know, these kind of things. But we don't make them feel like they have an option to turn to the people in their community, or to turn to their friends, or to turn to even law enforcement at times. What measures or what more do you think we can do as a people? Because I have a plan, and I spoke to a friend of mine yesterday about this plan that I'm putting together. Because I believe that it has, I always say this, it has to start with somebody. somebody has to make the effort. Somebody has to go the extra mile. We can't just all sit on our laurels and disagree with something and nobody is going to say, I'm going to take a step to make a positive change. I'm going to make that move to do what I think I need to do, to gather my women, to rally my mothers or whatever it is, to fight against whatever it is. So I have a plan in place. And I want it to be big. I want it to make an impact, because that's what we need. Recently we heard of a rise in sexual abuse cases for children. I mean, and when I talk about that, I get so emotional, but I get angry also because I have a daughter, and I have a son, and I think at any time it could be them. And apparently these aggressors have no respect of age. They don't care anymore about how old this child is or how young this child is. It's just about, I don't know, doing whatever it is that comes to their mind. How do we protect our children? Because what we fail to realize, that victims of today can become aggressors of tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. The cycle continues.
Victims of today can become aggressors of tomorrow. So how do we protect our children, but also how do we protect our grandchildren?
And we always talk about legacy. When I came, because I decided to stay last February, I saw a little girl, because I did a video for Pure Grenada, and she said, "Mommy, is that the lady?" And she said, the mommy said yes. And I don't know her. If I see her, I wouldn't know her. She met me by bread shop. And I think about what legacy do we leave for our children? And what examples do we set? Because I think it's important. And you said you have a plan. I have a plan too. So we'll plan together. We have all the laws on the books. The question is, are they effective? If we see, it's like you're going down a certain road and you're like, well, I'm doing it, and it's not effective, then maybe you had to change. You get it?
Yeah.
So my thing is, maybe we need to shift and look at things from a different perspective.
Right.
And there are certain things that, in my opinion, could be improved. As I said before, it's like doing a puzzle. The pieces are there, and it's just a matter of putting them together. We have a lot of resources in Grenada, and we just need to take it and put it together and use a holistic approach. That's how I practice. When a woman comes to me as a victim of domestic violence, I don't only fix her up with she law business. I make sure you have housing.
Right.
You need to go back to school because you need that financial independence.
Right.
You need to go for the counseling. There's like a whole list, that I do. So in my opinion, it starts with education. We talked about that. It starts with education, from the time they're in primary school, so that you understand respect. I grew up with my grandmother, and I spend a lot of time now with my mother and father. I love being home because I'm still a child, I live between two houses, and it's about respect. Your parents have an obligation to teach you respect.
Right.
And it starts at the home. I see a lot of things where the parents disrespect the children and what you expose your children to. So it starts with that education and formal education as well, because that helps to alleviate the poverty, because a lot of domestic violence and child abuse stems from poverty. Because think about it. If you have a little bit of money, you have a decent job, you don't have to leave your child with some aunt or uncle. Your child gonna go to a regular daycare after school program where the chances of abuse, I'm not saying it's not gonna happen, it's it's lower. So we need to have a comprehensive programs, and government has a role as well. Government has the responsibility to make sure that we have shelters. We do have a shelter in Grenada, but we need a little bit more. Some of the housing that we have coming on stream, it's important on the government to say, listen, they are going to leave a certain amount for victims of domestic violence. And you have to realize, as a victim, it is transitional. So you don't go into people's place and stay for 10 years.
Yeah.
Ma'am, it is for a period of time, and then, permanent housing has to come on.
Absolutely.
The other thing is that law enforcement, it's important to make sure that all our angles of law enforcement, make sure they take it seriously. We have the Special Victims Unit, we have the Community Relations Department, and the wider Royal Grenada Police Force, which in my opinion, there's always room for improvement. But there are all of those things in place. And I think it's important for victims as well as their children to understand these are the things, most children now have a cell phone.
Right.
So as a parent, program a number in the cell phone. You understand? Program for special victims units is 400 or 911. Program it in your phone so that all you have to do, and you teach the children to be safe. Because I think if you have a society where there's abuse, it affects you as an individual level, and it affects us as a society. It's all are we in the same boat?
Yes.
For social services, you need to make sure that there's counseling, and we do as Grenadians have to make sure that people's affairs are kept confidential.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
Yes,
that is a big problem.
We do, because it's sad that you're saying the woman was, this situation. We need to make sure that women are safe, women, children, and men, so that individuals are safe. So, you do the counseling. We need to have empowering programs, because a lot of the times it's about self-esteem. I don't have a choice. You understand? A lot of people think because you're in a certain circumstance, because whether it's financial, whether it's whatever it is, you can do better. Well, maybe, the woman or the man is remaining because they genuinely care. Yeah. Not that you can do better. Why is it you can't do better? Yeah. You understand what I'm saying?
You can always do better.
You can always do better. And then there's a time where you just get tired. You get tired, you're exhausted, and you're like, you had enough. You had enough, and it's just time. And the church also, I'm a Roman Catholic, so I grew up in the church, and a lot of my morality, it stems from, I went to Mother Rose, I went to convent, stems from my religious upgrowing. And so to me, it's important that the church also does a part in terms of that healing process, because most of us, from the time when we stop going to church, when we reach 18, and we feel we big.
Well, that's not even the age anymore. Sometimes, now in these days, sometimes you can't even get 12-year-olds to go to church.
Yes, and the judiciary has an obligation as well. We talked about that in terms of making sure that the laws are there on the books. And they're treated the same. What I gather, I listen. My father says a listener is a learner. Yes. And what I gather is that within the system itself, whether, that there is some bit of discrimination, because if so-and-so comes for help, she will get help. But if a next person comes, she ain't getting the help that she needs, and that shouldn't happen. Right. It should be that we're all equal. We're all equal before the law, and we all need to be treated with respect, and make sure that, not because it's Mr. So-and-so, he, arrest him too. Everybody going. You understand? Well, that's just my opinion. Some people may think differently, because then it's about precedence.
Yes.
It's about precedence, and we have a problem where, because it's Mr. So-and-so, we bend the rules. And when it comes to the man on the street, he's treated differently. And the problem you're going to have is that the man on the street now has become socially aware of certain things, and that comes from, general knowledge. We're educating our children, so what do we expect?
Exactly.
Part of education is the ability to critically analyze, to ask questions. So everybody, in my opinion, have to step up and do do the right thing to make sure that we have a cohesive society.
Absolutely.
I think also we have a lot of NGOs, so non-governmental organizations and foreign agencies in Grenada, and we need to harness them. For instance, last year, the Spotlight Initiative came about. I'm sure you know about that, with the UN and the EU. So there's a lot of funding, there's a lot of resources being put in there. So take advantage of that, and use those things to help. As well as members of the diaspora. I lived in the diaspora, and I would come back about 2 and 3 times a year, and they'd be like, "You're here again?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm here again." And we are willing to help.
Right.
As I tell people, we never spring berry here. So we want to come, we want to help, and when we come, humility is important. Some people have humility, others don't. And, and that comes from both ways. And we want to help use our resources, let us, because for instance, we're small, and because we're small, certain things we lack the ability to do, you understand? Right. And I always say most of our doctors are trained outside. They train outside, and so use the members of the diaspora. And it's an obligation on the diaspora that you realize we have an issue in Grenada, and put out yourself and come and help. Say, you know what, this is my expertise. I'm a counselor, and I'm going to come and work with the ministry and get things done. We have internet. Listen, I had court yesterday. I have court in Toronto almost every day. And so, thank God, this is one of the benefits of COVID, that, and I'm making this statement that members of the diaspora need to give back. It is important that we give back, that we help as much as we can. Because at the end of the day, when you do travel outside, you're Grenadian, you're an ambassador for Grenada, and you have to be careful with what you do and how people see Grenada. You understand? Absolutely.
Now, I just want to bring up some statistics, very troubling statistics as it is. For the first quarter of 2021, sex crimes unit recorded 51 reports of sexual abuse in children. Now, if we do the math, that's about 17 children being sexually abused every month for the first quarter of 2021, right? In 2020, it was 33. I mean, this is very troubling statistics. And these are only the ones that are reported, the ones that are brought to the attention of the authorities. It is my belief that there is more.
Yeah,
that there is a lot more. That there are children out there who are really struggling with this kind of abuse, and sexual abuse does not involve just intercourse. It involves any inappropriate intimate touching or behavior or language that is used towards a child that is not of age of consent. And I think that this is a very troubling statistic, and we need to look for ways to do so much more than just talk about this now. I think we have gone way past the talking stage. I think now is the time for action stage. How do we get to the point where a child can feel comfortable enough to go to school and say to their teacher, "Miss, I am being abused"? How do we get our children to be so comfortable and confident in the fact that they can go to school, or they can speak to an adult, a leader in society, and say, "This is happening to me"? Because I feel like there are children out there. These 51 cases are cases that maybe a parent recorded, or that maybe a child who has had enough said something, or somebody noticed some subtle change in behavior or so on, and it was reported. But there are children going through it who don't have that luxury, whose lives are probably being threatened, or the lives of their family members being threatened if they say anything, who feel like they don't have anywhere to turn. And that's a really terrible place for a child to be, to feel like I don't have anybody that I can turn to, to talk to about this. So what systems do you think we can put in place? How do we get to a place where our children can feel comfortable enough to come to us with their problems?
In Toronto, there's something called Neighborhood Watch, where we basically watch out for each other.
Right.
And I think as a society, as I said before, we have all the pieces in place, but they seem not to be working.
Right.
And, I had this discussion with someone yesterday. And I said, we have to be careful, because if we allow this boil to fester, what is going to happen is that we in Liquor Grenada would be seen as a sexual haven for predators.
Right.
All the pedophiles would want to come because that's what we do.
Yeah.
And when they come for, my son is 25? So he's kind of older. He's past the age. But when they come for your child and your child and your
Yes.
child, you understand
Yes.
what I'm saying? So we need to make sure that that does not happen.
Right.
What can we do? I think there's a lot of things. Is that conversation again? It's parents. You are the parent. You are the guardian of your children. You know, have conversations with them. Society has changed. When I was growing up, we didn't have the internet. I didn't know anything about the internet. You understand? And children are more inside now. You know, a lot of the children tend to be inside and they see things and they're exposed to different things that for the first generation, we didn't have that, you know. And so it is important on the parents. Speak to your child, have those conversations. Go online instead of spending a lot of time. I said to my parents, instead of spending time on Facebook, go online, Google stuff. You know, it's called Dr. Google for a reason.
Yeah.
When it's the same thing like the vaccine. You know, go online, Google the information. And make sure it's from a trusted source. Google almost every information you need is on Google. Yeah. So find out. Google child abuse, how to prevent it. So it starts with the parents. It starts with the teachers, because you are also the eyes and the ears. The teachers and the churches, they are the eyes and the ears. Because when a child comes to school and the child is acting differently, what's happening? You know, you have to be cognizant of that. You have to act with heart. You have to care. You have to care, because at the end of the day, you are a child, and you know, it's as our adults, it's our obligation to protect our children. So it starts with the teachers, it starts with the pastors of the church, it starts with the bus drivers,
Yeah.
You know, the children take the bus every day. If you have a problem at home, you tell the bus driver.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up with a bus driver. Cotty was my bus driver. You know, and so I remember seeing him the other day, and he said, I gave him $100. He's like, yes, that's from all the time you didn't pay the bus. He's like, you see, I took you to school. Yes. So and you know, because I take the bus, I don't know how to drive. So I realized, you know, you have young children who take those buses, and it's important that, you know, we know that some of the bus drivers do victimize the children, and that itself has to stop, because you are one of the guardians. It has to be where children have. I grew up with my cousin. I have two mothers, you know, my cousin Rosie. So if anything happened, I would speak to her. I would speak to my mother. So as adults, we need to do that. So, you know, we need to make sure that there's somebody that the child can speak to.
Right.
And you know, we need to have comprehensive programs to make sure our children, and not once a year is Child Welfare Month, or we go out and we match and we had it with a T-shirt.
And the children don't even understand what they're matching.
You understand
for.
what I'm saying? It has to be where every day, it's every day you are reminded that, you know, to be safe, and there's a balance. There's a balance. You know, you don't freak out those children so they're thinking, oh my God, everybody's gonna be abusing me.
Right.
But let them know what is acceptable as well as what is not acceptable.
Right. It has also been reported that a lot of in a lot of the cases of sexual abuse, it happens with people who are familiar to the children, who are close to the children. You know, people, you know, you really expect to do something like that to your child. That happens. What advice do you give your children? And this came to mind, especially yesterday with the occurrence of that sicko that the teachers had yesterday, and not that I am not for the teachers practicing their constitutional right to protest, but there has to be a balance, because the Constitution also speaks about your rights ending where my rights begin, and it is the right of the child to be protected, you know, from any harm and any danger. And if your action, whether deliberate or not, can put a child in danger, where does the balance, or where do we strike the legal balance between those two? Exercising your right as a trade unionist, and protecting the rights of the children. how do we balance? Because any number of things can come from that. For example, parents got up that morning, they decided, I'm going to send my child to school, got them dressed because I have all these things to do. Then in the middle of the day, you're told, well, the teachers didn't come to school today, so come and collect your child. Okay. You can't leave work. You're incapable of leaving work to go and collect your
surgery.
child. Right. So you say to whomever, just let her take the bus and go up. She can stay by the neighbor, or just let her take the bus and go up. She uncle home. You know, these are all situations that we are exposing our children, environments that we are exposing our children to for possible abuse. How do we strike that balance so that we limit or we mitigate the occurrences or the incidences or even the environment for that to take place?
I think all legislation in terms of children, whether it's all legislation, if we look at the Education Act, part of that is that, well, and that's universal,
right?
Whether it's in Grenada, whether it's in Toronto, that the best interest of the child always comes first.
Right.
It is always paramount. So you as a teacher, yes, you disagree with certain things, you want to have industrial action, do it. But there is always a time and a place for things. And you as a teacher take an oath to make sure that children are safe.
Right.
So you have to ask yourself the question when you make these decisions, or would the children be safe? And the reality is, if they're not, then I think your answer is right there.
Right.
Because, you know, let's say for instance, dad is a surgeon. Both parents are surgeon. You can't get them 8-hour surgery, no phone, nothing. What happens when you have this? You have a situation where the children are left alone. We do not know what happens in homes.
Right.
You know, you see some people, you know, they live in a big house, they have a good job, they drive the nice car, but you don't know when you go home, she getting blows from like sun up to sundown. And remember, a lot of the times, the abuse happens late in the night,
right?
So the neighbors don't hear anything, and she getting licks not on her face because you don't want nobody to see the face or the foot or the hand, so it's on the body. Or you know, you have situations where the woman would be dragged around the room because the reality is that you wouldn't see the bruises. And so I think, you know, everybody in this situation, yes, you want certain things, but you have a legal obligation to make sure that the children are safe. Otherwise, you're failing in your duty to make nothing takes precedence over making sure that the children are safe. And you can say, you know, it's like I bust your head and you come back with a gun, or you use a cutlass. It's like, which is two wrongs don't make a right. And so there is a fine balance where, you know, you have to make sure that the children are safe. It boils down to that. We have laws on the books. I mean, sometimes they're followed, sometimes they're not followed. But in this situation, I think because the teachers, as I said, are one of the key eyes and ears. And as parents, we depend on our teachers to be our babysitters from 8:30 to 3:30. I mean, that's the reality. That's one of, you know, it's the reality. And so you as a parent, when I drop my child to school at 8:30 in the morning, I expect that he or she would be saved from then until I pick the child up. So the fact that, you know, children are left alone, you have things that would happen such as bullying. I mean, children do bully each other, peer pressure. I was, you know, and I had teachers, like I always say, I had Miss Dubois, I had Miss Chase, you know, those were my teachers in convent. I had Miss Thomas, and you know, and so it is our obligation as adults. It is adults. That's the difference. We are adults. We have an obligation to make sure that our children are safe. And, you know, there was the article with the 17-year-old and the 2-year-old, and it broke my heart, because the thing about it is, what he too was a victim. So
Yes.
we talked about that, that
Aggressors becoming
and we need to do a bit more counseling. We need to have workshops in different communities, especially now with COVID. We have
Right.
I mean, COVID is opening the belly of all beasts. Any beast that's there it would come out, and we would see, unless we do certain things to make sure that our children are protected, it would get worse.
Absolutely. Now, with that being said, because we have to start looking for ways to help our children to mitigate the risk of these kind of things happening. Now, you can't tell somebody how to exercise their right, but you can put procedures in place to ensure that their rights doesn't infringe on the rights of others. Now, I am firmly in support of extension programs for children, in terms of the school cannot be the last stop for identifying changes in children's behavior. We can no longer be comfortable with it being the parent and the teacher's job, because clearly that does not seem to be working. And if something doesn't work, we try something else. We don't just keep beating the same dead horse over and over and over and hope that eventually change will come. That can't happen. We have to enact the change we want to see. So I firmly am for there being extension programs. Like, for example, my kids leave school at 2:00. Right? And this is just a theoretical statement. My kids leave school at 2:00. At 2:00, what does my child do? They go home and await my arrival, or they come and they sit in the office with me until I'm ready to go, and at that time I can't pay no attention to you because I'm still at work. I'm still doing what I'm doing. When I get home from work in the afternoon, I'm tired. I want to put my foot up for a little while, and I want to be bothered by what's going on with you and so on. So parents don't have open conversations with their children anymore about their days and so on. Me, I make that a practice. When I get home, that is my duty, to speak to my children about their day. How has your day been? We need to regularize having conversations with our children, because in having conversations with them, that's when you pick things up. That's when they start feeling comfortable enough to say, Mommy, I went to school yesterday and XYZ said this, or XYZ did this, and guess what?
Yes.
It may not be an issue with your child, but it may be an issue with someone else's child
Who's suffering? Yes.
that is suffering, that you picked up. Just the other day, I was telling our listeners that my daughter came home and was telling me about a terrible day she had because one of her friends came to school and she was crying and so on, and in the end said she wanted to kill herself. Took her to the school therapist and so on, and they took it from there. But it's in conversations like these that you as a parent can pick up when another child is struggling, and you may be able to help that other child. So in the same way, I believe that communities and people need to come together and find ways to have extension programs for children, where they can integrate with the children in their communities, where they can share with the people in their communities, or the leaders in their communities, or with other people leading these programs, where they can speak to these people. So even if they don't feel comfortable speaking to mommy or daddy about this, and they don't feel comfortable with their teacher, that they have another outlet, another alternative that they can turn to, where they feel comfortable. We need to start regularizing these things, because what we've been doing has not been working. And it's been shown in the 60-something%, what is it, 64.7% rise in sexual abuse cases in a quarter, 3 months. In a quarter. This clearly shows us that it's not just failing, it is already dead. So we need to start doing more. And how do we do more? How do we go from making videos on social media and talking about the ills in society to turning that into a proactive movement, in turning it into us coming up with resolutions to solve problems and not just spitting problems out? How do we enact this kind of change? And I think that's the sort of question we need to start asking, especially as young people. And I say young people because the older people are old already. when I say they old already, I mean they've had children. Their children are now the next generation. So this generation needs to start looking out for their generation that's coming after them, their children. And how do we deal with people from our generation whose abuse was not properly dealt with, abusing our children? How do we deal with that? How do we mitigate these kind of occurrences? And these are the kind of conversations we need to start having, you know?
So the reality is those older people typically are the perpetrators. So, and again, we talk about that cycle. I think what we need to look at is programs for children, as you said, after school. So what happens between 2 o'clock and let's say 4:30-ish,
Right.
4:30. You know, what happens to our children? And we can do things, for instance, like have after school programs.
Right.
A lot of children would be going home to a situation where the parents lack the ability to teach them, and you know, as well as the drive, the motivation, and the value. Some parents value education, others don't.
Right.
So you can have extracurricular programs, and that in itself teaches your children a lot of social skills. You know, you can teach them PAN, lots of things. And I know it's COVID time now, so we have to be careful. But this is where I always say parents themselves can volunteer. Like I live in Montparnasse. Alpha is right there.
Right.
So a few weeks ago, Alpha had cross country. I saw I had more parents than children. You know, the parents were out. They made a conscious effort to be out. And it is your child. So if there is a swimming activity, pick up yourself and get dressed and go out. You know, on the other hand, the teachers, it's not their responsibility to always, it is not their responsibility to parent your children.
Right.
As parents, get up, as my grandmother would say, and get. It's your children. You know what I'm saying? So, but I think we need to have some programs, some after school programs, so that we know that the children will be protected, they can learn different skills, they'll be more comfortable, and those programs are usually supervised by adults. And when you have that, then you would realize that there's one extra eyes, one extra ears, and those adults need to be trained in terms of how to deal with children. We could also look at having some parenting programs.
Absolutely.
I have had several of, and that's where people in the diaspora need to come in. You understand? You know, there's so much things. You can have a program. You know, I deal with lots of agencies in Toronto. And, you know, I send my male clients, I said, listen, because typically when it comes to custody, woman gets custody. I said, typically.
Right.
I said, listen, go do a parenting program. And there are 12-week parenting program, you know, different things that are necessary because, you know, you gave birth to your child and it's your obligation to make sure that your children do well. Right. And you know, so those are some of the things we can certainly look at, and we should look at in terms of making sure our children are safe.
Absolutely, absolutely. Maybe we need to turn mommy and me classes from a concept where it's just, you know, a mother when she just had a baby and they go and they sit with other mommies and I don't even know what they do, but but it needs to become an actual thing that we do now with our older children.
Yes.
You know, a mommy and me class where you go with other mothers and you share on your experiences and you learn from other people how to handle situations and share with them how you handle situations. You see, sometimes we think that parenting needs to be just a private matter. It needs to be just me and my children, and I'm going to parent my children how I know best. But maybe your way isn't the way. Maybe the way that you were parented maybe wasn't even the right way. You know, sometimes we look at children who are being physically abused and we wonder, well, how that person could just watch a child and beat them up so, and not understanding that maybe that is how that child was treated when they were, treated when they were, that's what they know, you know? So sometimes it's more than just looking at a situation from the outside and saying, you know what, that is business, that is personal matters, I don't want to get involved, you know? And then afterwards, if something happens, you sit and you say, "Oh boy, I wonder if I should have, or if I could have, or you can see, watch how the man just killed the child, and there was something that you could have done to prevent it." Even instances of children having suicidal thoughts or wanting to involve themselves in suicidal actions. How do we? Because a suicidal thought doesn't just present itself on somebody's face. It doesn't just you don't just sit there and say, "Miss, I want to kill myself." It doesn't happen like that. You don't just wake up in the morning and tell your mother, "Mommy, this afternoon about 4:00, I'm gonna hang myself." These things don't happen. These are not realistic.
It's cumulative.
Exactly. So a child is sitting there suffering with something, and if we aren't careful enough, we are gonna have a lot of things like that to deal with. We're going to have a lot of instances like that on our hands where our children are just fed up. They just can't take it anymore. They don't know where to turn. And we as individuals in society, we are going to find somebody to blame, because that's how society works. We always look for somebody to blame, and we do not do any introspection on what we could have done to enact some sort of change that could have saved that person's life. Maybe not you directly. You doing something may not directly affect that person, but you might affect somebody that might affect that person's life. So we have to start thinking about these things, and we have to start understanding what our role in society is in helping to build families. Society is supposed to be a family.
Exactly.
That's what it's supposed to be. Family is not just what we learn in school, mommy and daddy and brother and sister and extended family with grandma and grandpa. Family is supposed to be your community, the people that surround you. So we have to, as parents and as teachers and so on, who we expose the children to, that's part of their family. That's who they know. We have to make sure that we place the right people in their lives, and we have to pay attention to make sure that these people stay right.
Stay in the lane too.
Stay right, yeah. But we're going to open the lines because it's already past 11 o'clock. And we don't have much time left. So we're going to open the lines for persons who want to call and contribute to the conversation. The number to call is 440-7377 if you are calling locally. If you're in the diaspora and you want to contribute to the conversation, the number to call is 347-329-3101. You can also send a message via Facebook, WhatsApp, and you can give us a call via WhatsApp as well, and engage yourself in the conversation. How do we enact positive change? How do we deal with these kinds of situations when they come around? And how do we prevent more situations from happening? Because these 51 children now have to be counseled for God knows how long to try and get them to a place where they can become
normalcy.
Comfortable members of society, and they don't become aggressors themselves. We have a caller on the line. Hello, good morning.
Morning, Mr. Uncle.
Hi, good morning.
You're only there this morning. Your co-partner there?
No, he's not here, but we do have a guest with us this morning.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the call to inform about the breakfast.
Okay.
Not the breakfast.
Go ahead.
The breakfast has been postponed to June of this year. When we say June the 4th, you have to see what it will be for next year. This year, so next month. Let's say next month because May come almost to August, April almost end already. So June the 4th will be our breakfast at same venue, same time. So we give you a co-partner and more people to save more money to come and purchase some lovely breakfast. Alright? So,
all right.
Yeah, Mr. Uncle, there's sometimes you want to, but then there's things that, there's times where we reach a position where we just cannot afford. Alright? It just cannot afford. And I know definitely, and even those who clamoring for the 4%, they know the situation in the country. Right? And they know the government always promise what they say they're going to do. Right? And if something happens that they go to the person with the promise and say to them, I am unable to fulfill what I promised you, what they did. Right? So I do believe sometimes in life, yes, we want it, or we have to put one, or put what we want sometime back. And look at the greater the greater part of the bigger part of that. We have seen that sometimes we are saying like, don't put children and big people merely.
Yeah.
Right? So then if you say that, why should we try to involve the children in something that we want? Right? Something we want, so that we put in what you want in front of the children. Because the children cost more than 4%. They cost a lot. They could cost millions, 100 millions. Right? So that depends on you. The educators have to think and shape the young people's mind. Because remember, the things that we encourage young people to do, today it could come back and haunt you. It could come back and haunt you. So I ask the public workers, the teachers union, let us come to one common understanding. Look at your picture. Grenada is a peaceful country. Yes, you promised the 4%. No one say that you will not get it. You will get it. And I do believe in every situation that you want to fulfill something came up, which you have nothing to do with it, like a disaster, right? So that you save someone to do something, right? But then something come up where you had no choice. You have to use the money, right? So but before you use the money, you call the person and say, Mr. John or Mr. James, I promised to give you that money, but something came up where my child takes sick, and I had to use that money, which I feel is the right thing to do. A principle, you don't just use the money. I do say nothing, right? So I did do believe every argument. Most important, we have to come to a common understanding. You understand me, I understand you. So all what I asking you to do, just give me a little more time, and you receive your money. Which I feel is something easy to understand. It happened to everybody. Sometimes you walk in, and then you get paid. Because in 2008, 2013, we was working, we expected to get paid on month 10. But then nobody said anything to us. Well, we had to wait until the 34th or 35th of the month to get our money. But nobody's making nice about it. So, Mr. Duncan, have a wonderful day. God bless you. And,
Yes,
whoever you have there with you. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thank you, sir. Same to you.
Yeah, I think what we need to do, Trisha, is familiarize ourselves with the rights of the child, and allow children themselves to familiarize themselves with what their rights are, And I think once we use those rights as affirmations. It's my right to be protected. It is my right to be respected. It is my right to not be neglected. These are all of my rights, So I think it needs to be more of, it needs to come away from just being what the legal rights of a child are, and teach these things as affirmations for children so that they know what their rights are. So no one can come to you and try to take those rights away from you as a child, and then you don't know what to do or you don't know where to turn, because you know that these are my rights.
I agree, and it happens. It's happening because children now tend to be much more vocal, and they would say, "Well, that's wrong," or "That's wrong." And with everything, there's balance. There's balance, because what I hear from the parents is that, so we have CPA here in Toronto, we have CAS, same thing. And, parents and teachers also, I would hear them saying that, children now lack respect for authority, right, because the system gives them too much rights. So it is that balance where, yes, you inform your children of what is right. And I think maybe in terms of using the word rights, is what is right and what is wrong, what is accepted and what is not accepted. So, for instance, instead of telling a child you have a right not to be neglected, I would say, it's important that an adult is with you at all times. Right. So sometimes it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. Yes. So an adult has to be with you, because I see this a lot in Toronto. I do a lot of child protection, and a lot of our parents who or Grenadian, and they're now in the diaspora, is because you would see them leaving the 7-year-old, 8-year-old home for half an hour. In Grenada, we all know that, when my son was 5, he used to take the bus because children in Grenada, they're taught from an early age to be independent.
Yeah.
And so, you would see, I see the 5-year-old children taking the bus and they know which bus to take. And, I mean, and it's a good thing. And that's it's a double-edged sword because... Yeah. So you also have to make sure it's how it's done, because I hear the parents complain, I hear the teachers complain, I hear the adults complain about, the children or lacking respect. And I say it starts with the parents.
Yes.
It starts if you cussing bad word for your child.
Yep.
Well, what do you expect your child to learn and to give you back? Somebody said what? If you plant potato, you can't get peas. So the reality is that if you're causing bad word for your child, what do you expect?
Yeah.
And and the children look, they see, they hear, they breathe in whatever atmosphere you put them in. And it is important again for the parents to think about the type of movies you're exposing your children to.
Yeah.
What is it they're looking at on social media? And those are the things that, yes, you say to them, So I think as a parents, explaining to children what is accepted and what is not accepted. And maybe we need to pause and teach those parents how to parent.
Yeah.
You understand? Because if we have parents that... somebody used the word lava. I was like, what word is that? They used the word lava yesterday. I didn't know what it meant, but I get the connotation. If your parents lava, you understand what I'm saying? And they need to learn how to conduct themselves, how to parent, how to react with people. You're vexed. I don't mean you had to be getting on like
a raging bull.
You're vexed. Sometimes I get vexed. You understand what I'm saying? So it is important that we have to start with the parents.
Yeah.
And we can't always be looking for government to do this. Oh, God, it's the parents. We started with the parents. Make sure, when you have PTA, you go to the PTA meetings. My mother listen, I was a tyrant in school, but my mother used to make cake and bring cherries. I had to bring the cherry for Miss Chase. I remember it was Miss Chase, and I was a tyrant. But my mother went to PTA meetings. So she knew, and and I was one of those kids, we walking in tongue and touching all the buildings. And church, I was quite a handful. And my mother was always there to give me guidance, and my grandmother and my aunt. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it takes a village,
It does take a village.
It takes a village to raise a child.
We often hear in Grenada, especially when these instances of sexual abuse arise, when we start talking about it, or when the topic becomes a topic of conversation in certain circles. Like now we know what the first quarter is. We're going to talk about it for a couple months, then we're going to forget until something else comes up. And then you start hearing the cry, oh, government needs to have a registry for these sex offenders. Government needs to have, but in most cases, it's not repeat offenders, it's new offenders.
Yes.
So what we need to start doing, we don't need to have a registry for when it happens. We need to stop it from happening. We need to get to a place where we can safely say, my child is safe. And we need to stop. And this is what society has done to us, where we always believe that any change that has to happen with government. That's not always what it is. If we start as a people now to nip these things in the bud, then those new offenders would be very afraid.
Yep.
They would be very afraid to even think about it. Or if they want to think about it in the privacy of their home.
Their own mind.
In their mind. In their own mental space. But they would be very afraid to even consider. We need to start moving as women, as men, as people in society in that direction. We don't want a sex registry so we know who to point we finger at when something happens. That's not what we want. What we want is for these things to not happen at all.
Yes.
That is what we want as a society. And if we think that the establishment of a sex registry, a sexual offenders registry, is going to solve the problem, it will not. Because we're not dealing with repeat offenders here. Maybe in some cases it may be a repeat offender, but in most cases it's new offenses. It is new offenses that we are looking at. We are looking at children who can't even trust the people who live within the four walls that they live within. You know, so we have to start looking at this thing from a different perspective. We have to start as women, and that's why I say I have a plan. And I have a plan. And you know, sometimes when you look at certain situations and you think about, because I've been thinking about this for a while, you know, sometimes the spirit leads you in a direction and it keeps you in that direction until you have accomplished what you need to accomplish. At this point, this is how I feel. Like, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to accomplish. And it's not a situation where I feel like this is going to bring me some sort of recognition. Sometimes we do these things for the wrong reasons, you know, but it's just because I feel like we talk too much. Honestly, as a people, we talk too much. We talk too much and we protest for the wrong things and the wrong reasons. Look, 51 children, which means 17 children for the month of January, February, and March, have been sexually abused. I have not seen a placard. I have not seen or heard from civil society. I have not heard from teachers' unions. I have not heard from even Child Protective Authority. I have not heard from the people whose voices need to be heard in these kinds of situations, enacting change, putting things in place so that for April, May, and June, we don't get another staggering 64% rise in these kinds of things. These are the kind of things that I would rally behind. These are the kind of protests that I would put on a jersey and walk miles for, because these are the things that matter the most. At the end of the day, this is the generation of children that are coming to take over, to run our country. We don't want a generation of broken children.
Yes.
We do not want, and we need to also regularize counseling for our children. That is something that we don't talk about at all. It's like a taboo in Grenada. You don't hear parents wanting their children to be counseled. And I don't think that counselors are doing enough to offer themselves, so that parents don't have to say, well, because there are a lot of parents who don't know. They just don't know. Your child going through something and you just feel like they're fretting you or they're upsetting you. You know, you'd rather just not deal with it than to understand the fact that they are people too. They have feelings too. They experience emotions too.
I think in terms of the counseling, it may be a cultural thing, you know, because if you look at North America or, you know, the Western world, counseling has become formalized. But in the Caribbean and in Grenada, it's more informal. Well, you're going and tell your this friend, that friend, your mother, your brother, your sister. That's how I deal with my stress. You understand? And so the thing we need to do, I think, in my opinion, is that we need to give people the tools in terms of knowing, okay, I have a problem, this is what you do. So information is important, you know, information, it's just information. And we have all the tools. As I said, we have all the tools, and it is just a matter of putting all the pieces of the puzzles together.
Yeah.
So make sure that, you know, your children would know. We are our brother's keeper. We are our brother's keeper. So tell the children, listen, if you have a problem, have a, you know, we spoke earlier about each class has a den mother.
Yeah.
So have a den child. You understand? So that if there's a problem, you get a mature children, because some children mature differently.
Yes.
You know, you can come to this one and have dialogues with each other.
Absolutely. That is very important, that a child can go to school and know that there's somebody that they can confide
And
in.
their peers, yes.
Yeah, in their peers. And we need to teach children the importance of confidentiality. Not confidentiality in a way that you're hiding things from your parents, but confidentiality in a way that if my friend comes to tell me something and I think what my friend is telling me is troubling, I'm not going to go and spread it to 6 and 7 friends, but I'm going to tell it to someone who can help.
Yes.
Who can help. And that is what we need to start, conversations we need to start having with our children, so they don't feel like apprehensive to speak to, they're apprehensive with adults, they're apprehensive with children, they don't know where to turn, because we haven't taught our children the value of confidentiality, the value of genuinely wanting to help somebody, you know, that desire, that need to be part of a solution. We don't teach that to our children. We talk a lot about problems, we talk a lot about issues, but we never really talk about resolutions. We never really give advice on how things can be resolved. We never give support to resolutions either. Sometimes we talk about things and we want it to happen, and when it happens, we against it still. So we have to be careful in a lot of these things and a lot of these trends that we are putting out there. Conflict resolution is another one. How do we resolve our conflicts, resolve our differences without it having to become something that is controversial, you know, without it being like a war, without feeling that you need to add aggression to every situation in order to reap results. We have to start having these kind of conversations.
We certainly need to, especially now where, you know, we have COVID, and COVID comes with a whole bag of trouble, you know. And so, because sometimes it's funny, when it came to the climate change and the education about that, it started with the children.
Yeah.
So the children were taught certain things, and they went home and said, "Mommy, we're doing this at the school, we're doing that at the school," and so it's a matter of, you know, in people engaging with their communities, and I mean, every individual can do that, whether it's with your church, whether it's, you know, your social group, your friends and your family. You know, just make sure that you take responsible for your children as well as for yourself and your actions.
And I know we speak about children a lot, but it's not just the children. I mean, the children need more attention because, as we said, the victims usually become the aggressors, and you're trying to prevent that kind of aggression from developing in adulthood, but also for the women or the men that are being abused to know that this is not okay. And you know, in some cases, in some instances, or in most instances, that is, it's always an issue where the person that is giving the abuse was either abused, or the person that is getting abused was witness to a parent being abused and staying in an abusive relationship and thinking that that's okay, or being abused and feeling like they don't have another option or they don't have anywhere to turn, so they have to stay, you know. And we're always, in most cases, some people feel like, oh, well, we have children, so I'm going to stay for the children. I'm going to stay to make sure that my children have 2 parents or that they're safe, you know. So there are a lot of reasons surrounding why people are abused or abusive. We need to stop pointing fingers and start looking for resolutions on how we deal with these kinds of things, you know. And I think that's where we need to put away the old method, and we need to start looking at resolutions. I am all for resolutions, affirmative action. That's what we need. Like I said, we talk way too much. As a child growing up till now, all we've been doing is talking.
I disagree.
No, we have, as a society, we've been talking too much.
I think we've come a long way. You know, I was at a meeting the other day, and I said, when I was growing up, in terms of education, there was only national college. Now I realize, and as I said before, one of the bases of abuse stems in poverty.
Right.
Now there are a lot of programs. There's a lot of safety net programs. For instance, there's a seed program. And what it is part of it is for vulnerable women and children.
Right.
and for instance, you have the safety net where, children between, I think, is 3 to 18 once they're in school. And another aspect is that you must be going to school. Attendance has to be 95% of the times.
Right.
So we've come a long way.
Right.
We have a long way to go.
Yes, we do.
But so we've come a long way there. Or, as I said, it's as though we have all the ingredients, but it is making sure that we utilize them and we put everything in place to make sure that it's done properly.
So how do we get these machines or these parts to come together to get this machine moving? How do we get people to see that it's not about me, it's not about what and I'm just calling random programs, not saying that that's what's happening, but we have programs like Gino and so on. How do we get them to see that it's not just an individual program, but I need to work in collaboration? We all need to just come together.
Exactly.
Put us sit down in the trade center. Let's have a workshop for a day, and let's just come up with solutions to deal with these problems. Let us share our experiences. Let's brainstorm and bounce things off one another, so that and sometimes it's probably not what's happening, but that's how it appears, that everybody is looking for their program or their company to get a recognition, an individual recognition for something that has happened, when in order to defeat whatever it is that's going on, or that ill, it doesn't need a name, it doesn't need a program, it doesn't need an individual person. It needs everybody to work together. As you said, all the ingredients need to be thrown into the bowl, mixed together, in order for us to get that perfect recipe.
Yes.
We
talked about that at the beginning, because I said when I practice, I use a holistic approach. So it's, for instance, all the ministries, if you're looking at it from a government perspective,
right,
all the ministries need to come together and not work in silos.
Right.
So you have housing, for instance, there was an issue with one of the neighbors. So we had to get housing involved, we had to get the police involved, we had to get social services involved.
Right.
We had to look for employment.
Right.
So if you use all of, and so we have it, remember, we have all those tools together. So it is important that we have to work together as one.
Absolutely.
You listen to our national anthem, it's about unity, it is acting as one.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure that we act as one, we come together, because at the end of the day, as they say, it's all our we.
Is all that we no, and that's really important. And I loved when you mentioned the holistic approach, and I wish that more people would adopt that, because it's important for those the abused persons to feel like they have a way out, to give them, because in most cases they're not even thinking about that. They're not even thinking about the fact that, okay, when I get out of this, what am I going to do next? They just need somebody to give them an idea, to give them a step up. And that's why I always say, when we come down on social programs, sometimes we call it handouts and these kind of things. What you're doing is you're disabling the tools that will enable somebody from getting out of a really bad situation.
Yeah.
You're making them feel as if what they're doing is begging, when that's not even the case. When you have to put these things in place and these programs in place as a stepping stone of where you are. So I love the idea of that holistic approach, where we say, okay, fine, you've been abused, good, we're going to get you the legal support that you need, great, but apart from the legal support, there is other support that you need, because you need to become financially independent. You need to be able to take care of yourself and your children. You need to be out of the place that you are where the abuse is happening and be in a safe place. You need to also get that emotional support to give you the confidence to feel like you can do this without that partner that is abusing you. There is so many things that need to be addressed. It's not just about calling the police, putting the person in jail for a couple of years, and then the woman is just there and she's broken. She doesn't know what to do. She is still in her mind, she's still mentally enslaved because she didn't get the support that she needed to get out of there. We don't know what brought her to the situation that she's in now. I don't even think we ever cared to inquire why she got there in the first place. We're all about just not victimizing, but taking the man and throwing him in jail, or taking the woman and throwing them in jail, the aggressor, throwing them in jail, or making their picture public, or we're too what's the word I'm looking for? We are too engrossed in the actual aggressor when we need to be engrossed in the person who has been abused, we need to find ways to help them cope and adapt to society so they themselves don't become a nuisance. You know, we have to start looking. So I love that. But we do have some messages on the live video that I want us to quickly read. One says, "Hi Trish, in Canada, parents teach children to avoid strangers, call out when strangers approach them. They are taught at a very young age not to accept anything from strangers. Another thing I see is that young children 5 years are sent to the shops on their own." And you know, this is an important point because we, as you said, we have a culture where our children are very independent from very young. And maybe it's not a culture that needs to be changed, but it's something that needs to be looked at closer, you know. And as the individual is saying strangers, but in this case it's not strangers. It's the person that lives with you.
It's my son lived here for a while, and you know, I the phrase is called stranger danger, and he had to adjust being you know, he grew up in Canada. When he came and you know, he wouldn't say hi to anybody. You take the bus and I'm like, you have to say hi. You know what I'm saying? And so, again, it's that balance. It's, you can say hi. I don't want, because on the other hand, what happens if the child is in danger and the only person who has to save them is a stranger?
Yeah.
So it is about educating your children and saying, listen, this is acceptable behavior and this is not.
Yes.
So if Mr. Smith says to you, let's go in the back room and do what, we have problems. But if Mr. Smith says, Mary, you're thirsty, would you like to have a drink? That is acceptable.
Yeah.
So I you know, everybody's different, but I never taught my son to be afraid of strangers. I said, say good morning and, you know, be polite, and now I think he's normal.
You know, it's funny that in schools, especially in most primary schools, we teach these children these things about their private parts and things that people not supposed to touch them and these kind of things. But I think what needs to happen is that schools need to start having sessions for parents where they teach parents that as well. Because it needs to be, we often say that what happens in the school needs to be reinforced at home, and what happens at home needs to be reinforced in the school. And if a parent doesn't know how to communicate these things, maybe they need to be taught the way to do it. You know, there are some parents who just stay away from certain topics because they don't know how to communicate those topics. Maybe as teachers, because teachers are very good at communicating to children. So maybe as teachers, instead of just it being singular to the school environment, we need to start having, even in those PTA sessions that we have teachers that come in and teach your parents what they teach their children about these kinds of things, about these kinds of behaviors. And in addition to that, maybe we need to have parents come in and sit in these kind of classes with their children, so they learn it together.
I think that lays at the foot of social services. Let's put that at any teachers could be, you know. Let's put that at the foot of social services and say, you know what? I think, you know, we can have some parenting programs looking at best practices so that we improve. Because, I mean, when my son was young, he was 2, I decided I'm going to teach him at home. You know? So on the other hand, I commend the teachers because I spoke to someone. I called in Toronto. So she's like, she never spoke to her before. She's like, listen, I never talked to you before. She's like, I'm home with my children. And she said to me, watch, I'm giving those teachers a gift card from the liquor store. She said, because I can't deal with these children. And so on the other hand, we have to commend the teachers because they do a wonderful job in terms of keeping our children safe, and they need to do more because I was reading that there's a study that our children are reading at 60%, you know, in terms of the no man, no sir, you know.
I don't think it's more they need to do, and I've disagreed with a few people on this matter. It is not more. We keep and I often say, we say that a lot in Grenada, that this person needs to do more, that person needs to do more. I don't think it's more that the teachers need to do. I think it's the method that needs to change. It's the method. They need to change the approach in the way that they're doing it. Because remember, content never changes. Not content, concept. Concept doesn't change. But the way in which you teach concept can change, can vary. So we have to find more innovative ways to make our children want to read.
But that's, I was having a discussion with one of my friends this morning. His son goes to Westmoreland, and he is saying he's having problems with reading. And I said, when my son was young, tablets, yeah, I think he had tablets around that time. But he didn't get no tablet. You're crazy. I would buy him a book. I remember one Christmas he said, another book.
Yeah.
And that teaches them. I speak to teachers in Toronto, and what they're saying is that the children, they lack the ability to concentrate.
Yeah.
The ability to critically analyze.
Yep.
And to settle. And so it is. I see a lot of parents when they come to my office, they pull out a tablet. I'm like, what are you doing with that?
Yep.
I'm like, no, because in my office
occupied.
I have books. I'm like, go pick up a book. And so it's the teachers as well as the parents who parents too, man, pick up, instead of giving your child your phone. I see the 2-year-old with a phone. Give the child a book so that the child, and take your take your time and read with. Yeah. I read with my son. Those were the quiet times before he went to school. Instead of spending your time on Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, sit down and read with your child. Read. Those, just so they grow up and you don't have time. And it is a preventative measure to make sure that your children get the education they need. Other than that, we have the social ills.
Yes.
We have domestic violence. We have child abuse. We have poverty. And the reality is that it transcends. You live in Grenada, it continues. When you go up to America, it continues.
It continues. Yeah. It's funny that you said that, because that does happen a lot. You want your child to settle, you get him or you have to do something and you don't want to be bothered, you put on the TV and you give them. I've gotten into the practice, because before I would send my daughter and my son to read together with each other and so on, or to study. I may say, go and study, go and read a book, go. But I've recently gotten into the practice, and I find it very fun that I'm studying as well. So sometimes I have coursework that I would have to do, and I would have to read and so on. And on an afternoon when I come home and I take a shower and I said to the kids, listen, somebody said stop referring to them as kids. I say to my children, thank you, Antonio. I say to my children, I say, all right, guys, it's study time. All of us studying together.
Yes.
We sit on my bed, I'm on my computer, they're in their book, and we all are there for whether it's an hour, 2 hour. So they get to understand and appreciate what downtime is. What time away from device. I still struggle with devices. I still have a difficult time trying to pull them away from the devices. But it has to start somewhere. You have to, like I say, you have to enact the change that you want to see. Yep. But it is really an important thing for us to consider. Maybe we need to change, not just teachers. Often teachers get a lot of the blame because children are with
spend
them
most of the time.
More time. But as parents as well, we have to do what we can do to help the teachers, so their job becomes easier when our children go to them. But I honestly believe it's the method. It's the method that has to change. It's the method.
But that's interesting, because I went through the method, and I don't know. I think when we were if it's the method, the question is, why was the method working before?
Well, the children before and children now are completely different.
Well, children are children, and so exactly. So remember, they start with the parents. So.
But you see, the thing is, a lot of and you would realize it in especially people who have more than one child would notice it, that children learn not only at different levels but in different ways as well. So, for example, my daughter, in order for her to grasp something, I would have to sit explain it, we'd read about it, we'd talk about it, research it, and so on. Then she has it. But my son is different. You just tell him, he look at it, and he's good with that. He remembers. There are some children who struggle. They may take a longer time. Now, if you're teaching a reading lesson, you can't teach all three of these children in the same way. It won't work. Because a child that is like my son may grasp it. But somebody like my daughter may get it, but not fully. And then that struggling child isn't going to get it at all.
You know, what I gather from what you're saying is the teachers are teaching the children the same. It hasn't changed. And it's important for the parents, when you get home in the evening or on weekends, to spend time also educating your children.
Absolutely.
So do we also need to look at have adult education?
Absolutely.
Because the reality is that we may have some adults who are not really able to fully read and write, to understand
we
things.
have that. We definitely have
So
that.
we need to go back to the drawing board and say, mother, father, parents, and especially the young parents, because I'm on the board of PAM. And it's fine that you get pregnant, you go to PAM to get your high school. But what happens to the ones who do not want to go to PAM for whatever reason? You understand what I'm saying? Then I mean, they have children, and what are they able to teach the children?
Exactly.
And you know what? So do we have to go back to say, hey, although we need to have evening literacy classes in the evening?
We do.
So that we teach, so that the mother, when you go to school, your parents can help you do certain things.
Right.
I mean, I remember I did not learn how to sew because my mother has only me. So my mother, my mother would help me do my homework.
Yeah. You know, my degree is in literacy studies, education literacy studies. And it has really opened my eyes to a lot of things that we consider literate that is not. You know, some people believe, oh, well, I could read, so I'm literate. Or I could write, so I'm literate. And it's not just that. It's not just about being able to read words and write words. It's about being able to understand, to dissect, to, do deductive reasoning. These are all the things that make you literate.
Exactly.
You know, we look at literate as I could read and I could write, so I literate. So you're right. We do need to have adulting classes. We do need to listen. Education is something that does not stop. You always keep learning new things. So therefore, when you get to a stage where you are an adult, you don't stop learning. You keep learning every day, and you should aspire to learn. So you'd have individuals who are a little bit complacent about the situation that they're in. They don't know how to read, they don't know how to write, but they won't get any help because a little pride is in the way. We have to find a way to make them understand how important it is, so that people who are not so literate don't end up having children who are not so literate
and
as
lack
well.
the ability to help them.
Exactly. And then the cycle is just going to continue and continue and continue.
So we can have after school programs.
We can. A lot needs to happen in this Grenadian society.
And parents need to come out and volunteer.
Absolutely.
Like I said, it's not only the teachers. Miss, you have your child in that class, so you're going to come and do one evening. If there's 200 children in Mother Rose, you come and watch the class for one evening. You do your part. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? And because every parent has different skills. Every parent have different skills, different abilities. You have to come together because it affects all are we.
Exactly. We want to help build an independent society so there's less dependency on government, so that more children can help their parents and that poverty does not become a cycle.
Yes.
Some people are in generational poverty for years and can't get out. Generation after generation, you see this kind of thing happening, and they just don't know how to get out of it. It is our duty as a society to help them give them the tools that they need.
And education lifts. I grew up with my grandmother, I always say, and we knew that our generation knew that education lifted youth out of poverty. I think the issue we have now is everybody wants to be a pop star or a basketball player. And I always say there's only one Michael Jordan, there's only one Beyonce. But look at how much carpenters on the road.
Oh, yes.
You know, look at how much plumbers on the road.
Oh, yes.
Look at how much, you know, whether you want to do a trade, whether you want to do academic, there are resources out there. There's resources, so much resources.
Absolutely.
And in Toronto, there are so much resources. Just give it to your children and take advantage of it.
Absolutely. Now, this has been a very interesting conversation, but our time is up. See, I told you, the time just goes, the conversation just keeps going, and the time goes. But we will continue this conversation, and we will have a conversation after this conversation, definitely. But guys, it has always, and it is always a pleasure speaking with you. As we say here every day, in whatever you do and whatever you say, be safe and be secure. We always want to be talking with you, but we do not ever want to be talking about you. For those of you listening, living in the Laborie area, there is a vaccination program happening at the medical station there from 9 to 2 o'clock. You can call and make an appointment so that the Ministry of Health knows, you know, how many vials to walk with. Remember, it's 10 people per vial, so they had to make sure when they open that vial, they could vaccinate 10 people. Let's do our part. Everyone has a part to play in ensuring that we beat COVID-19. But more importantly, let us all do our part as a Grenadian society to deal with some of these social ills that we have going on head on. Let us stop the conversation and start the action. Or we shouldn't stop the conversation. We can continue the conversation, you know, but let's add action to that conversation, guys. It's always been a pleasure. Have a wonderful day and stay tuned for the National Report.
Tourism sector to benefit from new and increased flight schedules in the coming weeks. We'll have details to this story and more in the National Report. With the details to the news for Tuesday, April 27th, 2021, I am Rikisha St. Louis. Grenada will soon benefit from increased flight from JetBlue and American Airlines. Beginning May 6th, JetBlue will fly daily to Grenada, with American Airlines increasing its schedule in June. This is a direct result of marketing plans by the Ministry of Tourism and other tourism stakeholders to promote Grenada as the destination of choice during and post-COVID-19. During government's weekly post-cabinet press briefing on Tuesday, Tourism and Civil Aviation Minister Dr. Clarice Modeste-Kerwin said although tourism has been one of the hardest hit sectors as a result of the pandemic, measures are being implemented locally, regionally, and internationally to keep the sector afloat.
JetBlue, they will be scheduling daily flights effective the 6th of May, so that is within the next week or so. American Airlines has committed to more flights from the 2nd of June. They have not said how many flights. I think a lot of what they do will depend on the reopening of SGU in terms of physical classes being delivered.
According to Minister Modeste-Kerwin, the last few months have been difficult for businesses and individuals in the sector, as many were forced to close their doors and face huge financial losses. She assured them that things are looking brighter, and Grenada continues to partner with airlines to advertise in their magazines and promotional packages.
Also, we've been taking advantage of advertising opportunities with the airlines, with Caribbean Airlines, with Inter-Caribbean, and so on, in the magazines. And that too also helps. We're working with Expedia and doing hotel beds advertising with tour operators, a number of things. And I'm happy to say that British Airways has a May sale, and Grenada is included in that because the expected time for them to start is July. So come next month, they'll start to advertise and market Grenada as a destination that they're going to. And fingers crossed, if everything goes as planned, we should see British Airways returning. And as I speak of British Airways also, sometime in the next month or two, we expect to see Virgin coming back to our shores.
On May 5th and June 10th, Grenada will be featured on the American television game show Wheel of Fortune. 2 lucky participants will each win all-inclusive getaway compliments at the Calabash and Coyaba hotels. This, according to Minister Modeste Kerwin, will assist in promoting the destination.
Grenada will soon be, and I wanted to say that, on Wheel of Fortune. I'm told it's America's #1 watched game show on May 5th and June 10th, where 2 of our leading hotels, Calabash and Coyaba, they have provided all-inclusive giveaways for couples to these to this show for the 2 dates. And we will get an opportunity for our destination to video to be shown as well during that.
The government of Grenada is refuting allegations by the Public Workers Union that it is not interested in dialogue with the representative body for public officers. According to a recent news report, union officials claimed that government is refusing to speak to the union on the subject of the 4% wage salary increase that is due to public officers for 2021. However, a letter from the government's negotiating team dated March 30th expressed government's desire to maintain cordial relations with all public sector unions, including the Grenada Public Workers Union. Further, the letter, which was addressed to the Public Workers Union president, invited him and other union representatives to a meeting on April 7, 2021. In response to this invitation, the government negotiating team was verbally informed that the PWU was not ready to meet. To date, government has not received written correspondence from the PWU with regard to a meeting. In addition, by way of the March 30th letter, the government's negotiating team also advised the union that the collective agreement between the government and the PWU for the period January 1st, 2013 to December 31st, 2018 remains unsigned. The government has already met with the Grenada Union of Teachers in keeping with its promise to trade unions to keep them abreast of the country's fiscal situation, with a view to collectively determine when it becomes feasible for the government to pay the 4% increase. Although government's revenue earnings have slightly improved, it is still significantly below 2019 levels when the agreement was reached for the 12% increase over a 3-year period. Government has consistently acknowledged its contractual obligation and its commitment to honoring same, but it has requested a deferral in payment of the increase given the significant impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the country's revenue earnings. Continuing the news, the Ministry of Health is using the annual vaccination week, which has now been observed, to educate people on the importance of being vaccinated so that the country can slowly begin to return to normal. The week, which runs until Friday, is being guided by the theme, Vaccines Bring Us Closer, Get Vaxxed. Kevil Frederick, Communications Officer in the Ministry of Health, says the education process also included bus drivers who operate from the St. George's bus terminus.
We had a mini health fair at the bus terminal, and we provided services to the bus drivers, and that too, was well attended. The nurses didn't just talk vaccination, but they provided like blood pressure and blood sugar screening, height and weight checks, and of course we also spoke to them about nutrition.
Other activities include a walk through the Montu community to engage the residents. Following this, the Ministry of Health team will meet with residents close to the Montu SDA Church to further engage them on the importance of vaccination and to offer the AstraZeneca vaccine to those who are desirous of having it. The celebration of the week of activities will climax on Friday at the Grenville bus terminal.
We are going to be engaging residents there, on the importance of vaccination. We are going to offer them, of course, the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. And we will, take a time off, to speak about nutrition, and, all of the other things, health-wise. And it's important to share. Now, during the last days in the pandemic, what we had noticed is that, and Paro had even noticed that because of the challenges brought on by the pandemic, access to vaccine was somewhat interrupted because, people were on lockdown and so forth. And so a concerted effort is being made and was made soon as things started to be lifted, to ensure that vaccine was given its rightful place. And as a result of that, that too led us to this year's theme, which is vaccines bring us closer, get vaxxed.
Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell will continue his series of in-person engagements with the local media on Thursday when he hosts a live press conference. Dr. Mitchell will provide general opening remarks and maximum time will be allotted for responding to questions from the journalists present. The press conference will be carried live on GIS Television Channel 22 and the GIS Facebook page and YouTube pages. The live stream will be available to all media houses to facilitate the live broadcast of the press conference. Thursday's press conference will begin at 9 a.m. This is the National Report. The news will continue after the break.
Are you gonna wear your mask today? You see everywhere you go, there are rules you got to follow, so don't you say COVID-19 will delay. Take the opportunity to save your community. Don't be that guy, put a mask on your face if you're heading outside. It's your life, my life, more lives will be taken if we don't try. If you feel any symptoms, call the hotline. Stay inside until you feel fine. 6 feet away every day. Keep COVID-19 far from away. Keep Grenada safe. Be COVID-19 smart.
Welcome back. The Ministry of Health and the T.A. Marisho Community College have signed a memorandum of understanding for 3 years for the nursing and midwifery program at the college. The MOU was signed by Permanent Secretary with responsibility for General and Health Administration and Social Security, Ann Isaac, and Marva Bowen Neptune, Registrar at the T.A. Marisho Community College. Health Minister Honorable Nicholas Steele, who witnessed the signing, said his ministry is happy to work with TAMCC to strengthen the health sector in Grenada.
Being able to have this partnership with TAMCC is one way of us working together with our governmental and national entities. And also I think it is fitting that it is coming just in time, that it is one more thing we can celebrate on International Nursing Day, May 12th, where we pay tribute to our nurses for all of the service that they have given.
The program will engage registered nurses to specialize in the area of midwifery. T.A. Marisho Community College Registrar Marva Bowen Neptune said this has added to the mutual interaction and strengthens the partnership.
We want to make sure that the healthcare system in Grenada is intact and all our personnel are trained in nursing education. We understand the impact of COVID-19 on the island of Grenada, and it is imperative that we have people who are trained to respond to the healthcare needs of our Grenadians, especially during this difficult time, having to manage the COVID pandemic. And so we are happy that the Ministry of Health has chosen us as a community college to respond to the training needs of our young people and anybody who desire to have training in healthcare once they meet the requirement.
The program will be divided into practical and theoretical areas. Chief Nursing Officer Nesta Edwards gave some more details about the program specifics.
We do have qualified nurse educators. We refer to them now. They have a new title. We call them training coordinator and training officers within the Ministry of Health Training Unit. So they will be responsible for conducting the training. The intention is to train a cohort of 20 persons as midwives, begin the training in 2021, train another cohort of 20 in 2022, and begin another training cohort of 20 in 2023. So over the 3-year period, we are aiming to have 60 midwives trained.
That story just ended the national report for today, Tuesday, April 27th. Recapping the top story. Tourism sector to benefit from new and increased flight schedules in the coming weeks. On behalf of the entire news and production team, I am Rakisha St. Louis saying thank you for joining us. Until next time.